Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha Gurureva Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Chinmayam Vyapyat Sarvam Trailokyam Sacharacharam Tatpadam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Tvameva Mata cha Pita Tvameva Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva Tvameva Vidya Dravinam Tvameva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Jai Guru. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So we began our 8th chapter last week. Let me poke this box here. And the topic under discussion is what happens when we die. And we can look at this from 2 viewpoints. We can look at it, what happens at the death of the body. But it can also be looked at as when samadhi dawns on the mind and the ego identity dies. Always look at it from both viewpoints, where death here is an allegory. And the basic idea that Krishna brought forward last week is we set up the direction of our next life by the thoughts we entertain. We go to the Deva. Here, remember, the Deva is the presiding principle over any field of human endeavor. So if you want to know what your God is, I say add another O to the word, good. Whatever you think the good is, if it's relationship, or if it's prestige, or if it's money, or whatever it is. And then when we die, those collections of vasanas, we go to a loka, particular kind of a way station. And then held by those impressions, we come back into the perfect, right body. The body is a vehicle for garnering experience. It's a vehicle to satisfy desires. So, oh my God, why did I come into this terrible life this time? We chose it. Now, sometimes it's regret, sometimes it's a desire to amend or remediate something from the past. It's not just a desire for sense pleasures or stuff. And many of these desires that impel us into an incarnation have dissonance, they're conflicting. But we have the perfect right family, the perfect right location, the perfect right time. That impels us into our next experience. Now, you don't have to believe in reincarnation. You can also look at it from one experience to another. I can remember when I was a junior in high school and I was really, really very confused. My parents were getting divorced and stuff like that. And I chose a particular university and I wasn't communicating a lot with my dad at that point. And later on, he said, Jim, you could have gone to Yale. He was a Yale graduate. Legacy points. I didn't even know him. But that was the karma. That was the karma. That's not the incarnation I did. I did another incarnation, as it were. Another educational experience. We all go through these sorts of things. We make choices, frequently in ignorance. Then we get the inevitable karmic results. Until at some point, part of our evolution, the desire for the infinite begins to awaken in our hearts. All right, what verse are we on?
6.
Will you help us out, please?
Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam tyajatyante kalevaram tam tameveti kaunteya sada tadbhava bhavitah. Whosoever at the end leaves the body, thinking of any being, to that being only he goes, O Kaunteya, or son of Kunti. Because of his constant thought of that being.
So, by being here not only means a person. How many of you have had an experience where you meet someone and it's just clear you have such a connection? It's like you've known them for a long time, the communication's good, and they're a good friend. Who's had that experience? Yoga would say you've probably known them in other lifetimes. Or other people you come in contact with, and it's oil and water. Who knows what kind of karma you had in other lifetimes. But it's not just people here. It's environs and situations. Whatever I think is going to make me happy. Now listen very carefully. This is not superstition. It doesn't mean you've lived a life as a good person, as a yogi, and then all of a sudden you're filled with fear and you're afraid you're going to go to hell when you die, and then that's where you go. It doesn't work that way. That thought at the time of death, we build through a lifetime. But what Krishna is driving at here, those whose minds are fixed on me, come to me. And there's a dualistic or a devotional way of looking at that. I've spent my life worshiping God, Parama Prema. But then the deepest understanding is, the best of my ability, I've turned my mind within to the self. Soak the mind in Brahman. All right, next verse.
Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mamanusmara yudhya cha Mayyarpita mano buddhir mame vaishyasya samshayam. Therefore, at all times, remember me and fight with mind and intellect fixed or absorbed in me. You shall doubtless come to me alone.
So this seems like a paradox. Arjuna, fight. That's a metaphor. Live our lives. Whatever your job is, if you've got a relationship, got a business, do it. And keep your mind fixed on God. Now, let me give you some practical ways to do this. Mike, are you familiar with the little Brother Lawrence book, Practice of the Presence?
Actually, no. I've heard you talk about it.
It's a delightful, tiny little book. And his whole practice was, how would I think? How would I behave? How would I feel if the master were here with us? So you're at a meeting at work. There you are managing people. But what if Swamiji were there? What if Lord Krishna were there? Doesn't matter what form of the Lord you use. How would you think? How would you feel? How would you act? If an all compassionate, all loving, and all knowing God. There. Another practical tool is to give our work and our activity to God. So, who do you work for, Deepa?
Salesforce.
Oh, that's a trick question. You know what I'm going to say. Who do you really work for?
The goddess.
Yes, the goddess. That's how we do it. And Vinayak, you have customers for your product?
Yes.
Yeah. Who are they?
Krishna.
You got it. So endeavoring to see everyone that we work with as a face of God.
Jim, would you apply this also to personal relationships?
Absolutely. There's a wonderful little book called My Guru and His Disciple, written by Christopher Isherwood. And his guru was Prabhavananda, the old Swami down in Los Angeles. And Isherwood was gay, and he was a deep Vedantin, did a beautiful translation of the Gita himself. But he fell in love with this younger fellow, and he goes to the Swami and says, I'm in love. He seems to be in love with me. What should I do? Swami thought for a moment and said, see him as Krishna. Or see her as the goddess. Easy to say, not always easy. Now, that doesn't mean we don't enjoy their bodies. God's not approved. Look up there. See Krishna. All the gopis. Polyamory. It's been around for thousands of years.
Mm-hmm.
Well, all sorts of other ways to do this. Just try to it doesn't mean to avoid the world. Oh, I gotta be thinking about God. I gotta be thinking about God. You've all heard me repeat one of these favorite mantras from Chandogya. Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma. Sarvam Idam, all this, Kalu, verily is Brahman. Everything in the world is God. Everything, without exception. There's no place where God is absent. So anything you can do to keep your mind turned toward the infinite while you're engaged in this, Krishna does not say to Arjuna, okay, quit the fight, go to the forest. He's not saying that at all. I heard a question breath over here.
Oh, sorry, Jim. I'm just very a bit stuffed.
Okay. Sounded like a, oh, but what about? Yeah, that kind of a breath. Okay, next verse.
अभ्यास योग युक्तेन चेतसा नान्यगामिना परमं पुरुषं दिव्यं याति पार्थानुचिन्तयन्. With the mind not moving towards any other thing, made steadfast by the method of habitual meditation, and constantly meditating on the Supreme Purusha, the resplendent, O Parth, he goes to him.
So this again can be looked at in two ways. In meditation, with this radical reversal of the attentive faculty, the space between our thoughts. Who am I? Keep returning to this direct experience. Ch.8, I form this consciousness. And then, when we're in the world, there's a sense perception. To whom did this occur? To me. Who am I? Just a little glimpse of yourself. A feeling arises. To whom did this feeling occur? To me. Who am I? Constantly endeavoring to remember. Any thoughts on this? And here he gives us a promise. If we'll take up this practice, Atma Vichara, investigation into the self, you'll come to him. The promise. Next verse.
Kavim Puranam Manushasitaram Anoraniyam Samanusmaraitya Sarvasya Dhataramachintya Rupam Aditya Varnam Tamasa Parastat. Whosoever meditates upon the omniscient, the ancient, the ruler of the whole world, minuter than the atom, the supporter of all form inconceivable, effulgent like the sun, and beyond the darkness of ignorance. Looks like there might be another verse.
Yeah, let's take the two together.
Yeah. Prayanakale manasacharena bhaktya yukto yoga balena chaiva Bruvor matye pranamavesha samyak satam param purusha mukpaeti divyam. So I'm just continuing from the past, effulgent like the sun and beyond the darkness of ignorance, at the time of death, with an unshaken mind full of devotion, by the power of yoga, fixing the whole prana between the two eyebrows, he, the seeker, reaches the supreme resplendent Purusha.
Yes. So let's talk about what this verse is about. It's really about meditation. It's about meditation. It's about how should we direct the mind in our meditation seat. Now, we have here meditation verses. Meditation verses will divide themselves into two categories. We've got negation, not this, not this, not this. Then we have verses, it's like this, it's like this, it's like this. Again, these only point, they only indicate, they do not define. If we get caught up in definition, we're going to start to run into apparent contradictions. So, with the prior of the two verses, let's parse it idea by idea. So you're sitting in meditation, you've got your scripture, spend some time just quieting your mind. And you take each one of these ideas, and then again, turning the mind inward. See whether or not it's true about you, not about Krishna out there, not about the self. That does nothing to liberate us. We have to use these to inquire about our own direct experience. It is like this. So, some of you are wearing trousers, some of you are wearing skirts. Is the waistband of your skirt or trousers too tight, too loose, or just right? Which?
Just right.
Just right.
Yeah. Now, that's been so since Japan song this morning. But we brought the mind to investigate a direct experience. Take a deep breath through your nose. Is your nose stuffed up or are you breathing clearly? Mine's a little stuffy. Now, you've been breathing ever since you came in. But have you paid attention to whether your nose was stuffy or not? Probably not. So are you understanding what I'm saying? We're going to bring the mind's eye to a direct experience. Now, these two examples were still external. Now we want to bring our mind's eye to the experience of I itself. Now remember, you do not see, hear, taste, touch, or smell, emote, or think yourself. Yet you are not unknown. You know it. You are the knower. You are the means of knowledge. You are the knowing. You are that which is known, but never as an object. Always as the pure subject. So let's go through these two verses, taking each idea. First one.
Whosoever meditates upon the omniscient.
Okay. Omniscient. What does omniscient mean? Everywhere. Omniscient, all-knowing. Omnipresent is everywhere. Omniscient, all-knowing. We think of it as, oh, there's some God out there, and he just knows everything. He knew quantum physics before we've discovered it. That can be true. But there's a deeper meaning that has to do with the self. What is that which is the knower in every field of experience? When you got up this morning, did you have breakfast? Who knew it? I did. Did you go out and have some activity today? Yeah. Who knew it? I did. Did you drive over here or take the bus? However you got here, who knew it? I did. Who's aware of being here? Satsang, I am. Who is it who is always knowing? That's myself. I am the eternal, constant, knowing principle. Scriptures use the word chit, means awareness, means consciousness. But it's nityam, it's eternal. I'm always knowing. Oh, I got up yesterday, went through the whole day, but I didn't know any of it. It doesn't happen. Next idea.
The ancient.
Yes. And does he use Puranam or Sanatanam?
There's a few words. Kavim Purana Manushasitaram.
So, ancient here, Puranam, it means really old. We have the word Nityam, which is eternal, but that's in the now. Puranam means really, really old. Meaning, as far back as I can remember, what's your earliest experience? Who knew it? I did. What about kindergarten? Who knew it? I did. High school? Who knew it? I did. Oh, Jim, I've had an incarnation in me. I was a janitor in the pyramids 3,000 years ago. Who knew it? I did. And from the Big Bang, Brahman was knowing. So not only are you always knowing, but you've always been the knower. Next idea.
The ruler of the whole world.
Yeah. So this Ishvara Bhava, this attitude of rulership, what we want to do is understand that my little ego is not really the one who's in charge. When we study Yoga Sutra, one of the practices we're invited to take up is Ishvara Pranidhana, trustful surrender to God. I can, he can, I can go let him, like he's going to do it anyway. But I get a lot more peace if I take on that act. It's all going to work out. God is in charge. There's an old Zen koan. From where you are sitting, move the distant boat across the water.
Move the.
Huh?
Can you repeat that, please?
From where you are sitting, move the distant boat across the water. It's not about having psychic powers. It means the same Ishvara that's got your body sitting on the sofa is moving cars up and down Grand Avenue and is causing stars to supernova. So we endeavor to let go of the compulsion to control, to dominate, to fix. Another slogan I love. I'm frightened because I see a meaningless universe. I see a meaningless universe because I'm in competition with God. Once I think Jim, have to get in there and control and fix and protect, then all of a sudden the world looks pretty scary. God's in charge. We get inklings of this. All you have to do is walk out into nature. We know humans have screwed it up. And it's beautiful. It's just beautiful. All started with the Big Bang, and it's unfolding perfect. Next idea.
Minuter than the atom.
So, sometimes I will use the expression, look behind your eyes and notice the knower. And sometimes it seems like, oh, I'm this vast space, this sky of awareness. But sometimes it feels like I'm like a point from which I look out. Locus of perception. Question here is, how big are you? What's your size? The answer is, you are outside of time and space. You are vaster than the vastest. You are minuter than the atom. You are beyond the world of spatial dimensions. Doesn't mean you're going to look inside. Oh, I'm at a tiny point. No. You can't find a size of you. Yet you are. You are clearly you. Next idea.
The supporter of all.
Yes. So a supporter, a substratum, is that upon which conditions are imposed. So clay is the supporter of the pot, the vase, the bowl. Gold is the supporter of the necklace, the earring, the nose ring. The names and forms are a conditioned reality. But what is the support? What is the material cause? What is the stuff out of which everything is made? Consciousness itself. It is Krishna. It is Brahman. And because it never leaves its nature, the consciousness is never destroyed, you never go anywhere. Just the names and forms stand. Next idea.
Of form unconceivable.
Yes. What is my form? Unknown, unknowable, yet known. It's me, but it can't be defined. Can't come up with an idea. All these ideas, again, that we've talked about, point, they do not define. Yet you are you. The clearest way to apprehend that is to unknow. It's not about the acquisition of more data. It's that this isn't that. It's that this isn't that. What about this? Or what about that? What about this? In the beginning, we try to give you as many answers as we can. But at some point, drop it. Back in the second chapter, Krishna said, he who knows, knows it not. She who knows it not, knows it. Oh yes, I've read all these books and commentaries. I'm very well versed in Vedanta. You do not know. No direct experience. The person who can drop the mind. Next verse.
Effulgent like the sun.
Yes. So, what is the nature of consciousness? It shines. So, just like the sun shines on the just and the unjust, it shines on the virtuous person and on the criminal. Sun, it's its nature just to shine. So also, me, consciousness. I illumine virtuous actions, vicious actions. I illumine negative feelings, positive feelings. I illumine good thoughts, bad thoughts, successful failure. None of that stuff is me. I just am. Shine. The witness of all phenomena. Next idea.
Beyond the darkness of ignorance.
Yes. This is really cool. Actually, nobody's experience of the self is ever really covered. Oh, Jim, I'm caught up in the darkness of ignorance. I'm suffering around the world of birth and death. Oh, it's so terrible, so terrible. Guru says, I'm so sorry. Do you exist? Oh, yes, I exist. What's your existence like? Oh, miserable. Do you know your misery? Oh, yes, I know my misery every day. It's so miserable. We suffer so much. But that person who's suffering, who's in ignorance, I know, they do not lack the direct experience of the self. It is beyond the mind caught up in ignorance. Listen carefully. Both bondage and liberation occur to the mind. The self is ever free. It's only the mind that's caught up in ignorance. The self is ever self-evident. When have you ever not been you? You are always you. Problem is in the mind. The solution is in the mind. Awakened mind that objects the self even. Self simply is beyond even ignorance and knowledge. Any thoughts on this? Now, the implication here is very important. Don't try to be an enlightened person. If you think you're a person, you're deluded. No, you are the ground of being, which is beyond any idea of self. Don't worry about the mind's stupid ideas. None of it touches you. Next idea.
At the time of death, with an unshaken and with an unshaken mind full of devotion.
Yes. So here we can think of it as the very conscious yogi deep in samadhi at the time of leaving the body. But we can think of it also at the time of self-realization. The mind unshaken. The heart open. The last thought is thought. When the mind ends, the sense of being a person ends. And when the mind returns, it's changed by that direct experience of its own disappearance. Mind you, you're not unconscious. You're just not thinking. The mind goes, oh, there's nobody there. I'm not a person. I'm that vast, empty space of consciousness, untouched, unchanging. Next idea.
By the power of yoga, fixing the whole prana between the two eyebrows.
Yes. So by the power of yoga, it is the mind that gets yoged. This can also be read as a reference to the higher practices of Raja Yoga, which I'm not going to go into. But I think a simpler and more direct understanding. Power of yoga, mind so still, deeply absorbed in itself. Here, all the prana, all the extroversion of the mind is collected in there. Sometimes it's at that space between an incoming and outgoing breath, or the opposite, between the outgoing and the incoming. Don't focus on your breathing. Just pull your mind out. Keep the mind turned within. Absorb sound. Next idea.
He, the seeker, reaches the supreme resplendent Purusha.
So here, meaning in meditation, Jiva Bhavana, that feeling that I'm a person is gone, it explodes. See what I've been all. It can also mean at the time of physical death, if the yogi is conscious, is in deep meditation, is eternally united with the being. Is that the end of those two verses?
Yeah.
Okay. Really, really rich, dense stuff. Next verse.
Yadaksharam veda vido vadanti vishanti yadyattayo vitaraga yadi chantot brahmacharyam charanti tatte padam samgrahena pravakshe. That which is declared imperishable by the Veda knowers, that which the self-controlled and desire-freed enter, that desiring for which brahmacharya is practiced, that goal I will declare to thee in brief.
So now he's going to continue telling us what is the goal of the spiritual life, what is the nature of the self, what is it that the Vedas point to, what is it that is the reason we do yoga practices. And again, brahmacharya is usually translated as celibacy, can also mean continence. But the literal meaning of it is brahmacharati. Charity means to move or roam around. So it means to move or roam around. Turning away from the world. Endeavoring to revel in the self. Much as we can, as frequently as we can, as deeply as we can. Next verse.
Sarvadvarani samyamya मनोवृत्ति निरुच्य च मूर्धन्याध्यात्मन प्राण मास्थितो योगधारणाम् ओमित्येकाक्षरं ब्रह्म व्याहरन् मामनुस्मरन् यप्रयाति त्वजन्देहं स याति परमां गतिम्. Having closed all the gates, having confined the mind in the heart, having fixed the life breath in the head, engaged in the practice of concentration, uttering the one syllabled Om, the symbol of Brahman, and remembering me. He who departs, leaving the body, attains the supreme goal.
Yes. And again, what if I'm on the operating table? What if I'm in a car accident? What if I've got cancer and I'm full of opioids? I won't be able to do this. Don't worry about it. It's not really about what we need to do when we die. It's about meditation. So here, closing all the gates. What this means is sense withdrawal. Shankara will use the word uparati. The yogis use the word pratyahara. They'll use a metaphor of like the turtle or the tortoise, which has 5 appendages, just pulls them all. The key to successful sense withdrawal, closing the gates, is concentration. You all have the capacity already. It's intense focus. So closing the gates, what was the next idea?
Having confined the mind in the heart.
What is the spiritual heart? Now, again, some people think of this from the standpoint of the chakras. You concentrate your attention on your heart center. You can do that in meditation if you wish, especially if you're kind of emotionally shut down. It can be useful. But the heart, spiritually, is the union between the intellect and the mind. It's when the thoughting becomes so thin and in the mind and the emotional nature, all our struggles cease. So when those two are merged and become absolutely quiet, this is called the Hridaya, the spiritual heart. Next idea.
Having fixed the life breath in the head.
Again, this can be a reference to various yogic practices for the Raja Yogi. So many people will concentrate their energy in meditation in the Ajnana Chakra, the third eye. Frankly, I have always found it useful to feel my energy going out of my head. It's not confined in the body at all. It's spacious. But the metaphor is the opening of these spiritual centers. Next idea.
Engaged in the practice of concentration.
So, concentrating on Om. Here, Om is just a reference for whatever your mantra is. It can be one of the other bija mantras. Hrim, Om, Om Namah Shivaya. Om is just fine. As thoughts arise, just bring your attention back. Next idea.
Uttering the one syllable Om,
We just did
the symbol of Brahman, and remembering me. He who departs, leaving the body, attains the supreme goal.
So remembering me means remembering yourself. And to depart the body here means to break that identification with not only the physical body, but the subtle body. No personal sense of self is real. Those of us who are taking Vivekachudamani, we're going to move into extensive practice of discriminating between the self and the not self, subject and all the objects. I'm going to go through what is the not self so I can clearly see that it's not me. This is what is meant by leaving the body. I am not the body. I am not the prana. I am not the feelings. I am not the thoughts. I'm not even the thought of self, this karta, this agent. Oh, who am I? The witness of it all. In an auspicious moment, it's not about death of the body. It's about samadhi. All of that stuff falls away. I alone remains. Next verse.
Tim, I have
And
a
then
question.
Wait, we've got a question. Go ahead.
The way that I like to meditate is by focusing on each part of my body, start from the head and go till the toes, and just take a breath in from that part and let it go. So where I learned this was from John Kabat-Zinn's mindfulness techniques, and that really seems to help me. Do you have any thoughts on that?
That's a very good meditation, but frankly, one gets to the point where you let that one go. Because what you want to do is withdraw your attention from the body itself. But notice when you do that technique, if you can be aware of the various sensations in the body, then you are not the body, you're the knower of the body.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, this is the basic rule of meditation. The grosser the mind, the more meditative supports we want to have. Gross here doesn't mean bad, gross, evil, thoughts. It means lots of thoughts.
Mhm.
So when we have lots of thoughts, we have more meditative supports. So this scanning of the body is a meditative support. As your mind becomes more quiet, we drop the supports away.
And then you focus on just one.
Who are you? What's your essential nature?
Who am I?
Yeah.
It's a question to me.
That's a
Who am I?
question to you. It's a question to all of us. What is your essential nature? That's where you want to focus your attention. What is your direct experience of I?
It's tied to someone else.
No. That's a thought.
I don't know how to answer that question.
Yeah. But that's the question that Krishna's pointing us toward. Who is that online? You know I don't see well.
I'm Niranjan.
Hello, Niranjan.
Agent.
So let's go back to our 4 Mahavakyas from the Upanishads. The first one, what is the nature of ultimate reality? Prajnanam Brahma. Brahman, ultimate reality, is consciousness. Oh, I'm glad. Brahman out there is consciousness. No. Second Mahavakya, Ayamatma Brahma. This self is Brahman. The self itself is Brahman. Now, if you've been trained in a Buddhist technique, Buddha said there is no self. We Vedantins say they're absolutely right if you define the self as Jiva Bhavana, as the sense of being a person, the sense of being an individual. It's not real. What is the self? Self is Brahman. Then the third one, Tattvamasi. That's what we call the Upadesha Mahavakya, has what all are practiced. We must meditate, turn the mind within, and do Atma Vichara. Vichara actually comes from the root vich, which means to winnow, to separate the wheat from the chaff. And the way you do it, if it has a beginning and an end, if it occurs in time and space, if it can be objectively known, knower, knowing, and known, that's not real, that's not self, that's not me. Koham, who am I? I am the eternal subject. Going back to what Krishna was saying when he was talking about omniscient, omnipresent, those are the ideas that point towards who and what my essential nature is. This is jnana abhyasa, the practice of jnana yoga. Does that make it a little clearer?
Yeah.
Good question. Good question. Any others? Next verse.
Ananya cheta satatam yo mam smarati vityashah tasyaham sulabha partha nitya yuktyasya yoginah. I am easily attainable by that ever steadfast yogi who constantly remembers me daily, not thinking of anything else, Partha.
So, once again, Krishna says self-realization is easy. It's easy. You don't have to have a high IQ. You don't have to live high in the Himalayas. But it's very rare. And it's very rare because nobody wants it. What I want is cash and prizes. What I want is relationship, sex, money, prestige. The price tag is we have to give up our attachment to all of that. Oh, it's too much. Don't want it. That's what the mind says. Till we begin to see that in fact it's my attachments themselves that are causing me so much suffering. Easy to perform. What do I need to do? At least during my period of meditation, give up the world. Give up any idea of self. Turn the mind within. See if you can find out, who am I? What is my essential nature? And the last Mahavakya, Aham Brahmasmi. At the moment of realization, the Shishya doesn't say, oh, I'm enlightened now. Come touch my feet, I'm a wise person. No, I'm not a person at all. I am Brahman. I'm that eternal, effulgent consciousness. And I've always been it. I just didn't know it. All right, one more.
Mamupetya punarjanma dukhalayam shashvatam napnuvanti mahatmana samsiddhim paramam gata. Having attained me, these Mahatmas do not again take birth, which is the house of pain and is non-eternal. They have reached the highest perfection, moksha.
So the Buddhists call this an arhat, someone who no longer is compelled to incarnate. But again, seeing all this as a metaphor for meditation. Some of us have what I call the yo-yo state. We've had savikalpa samadhi. There's still some glimmerings of personal identification. We come back. Deep meditation or here in satsang, we may go, I get it. I am that part of this Brahman. But then my everyday world comes back and I am an individual and I'm suffering and I have all these problems. I mean, mine. But if the mind deeply enters into the thunderous silence of nirvikalpa samadhi, you're never a person again. It's gone. It just is gone. Feelings arise, thought arise, but they're like 1,000 miles away. There's no longer any effort to discriminate. Now, some schools of Vedanta say that samadhi is not necessary. If you study Viveka Chudamani, Shankara says, necessary. Because the mind just won't seem to let go of its personal identification without it. For some people, it's this earth-shaking shift. Energies are happening and laughing and crying. Other people, they'll go into a deep state for hours. But if you've been practicing yoga for a long, long time, or in other lifetimes, you're pretty pure. It can just be a Okay. Shift. The promise is you don't come back. You don't re-identify with the body. Doesn't mean you're an instant guru. That's just a job. But we've gone beyond suffering. That's the promise. It's the promise that Krishna said. Okay, we'll end here. What verse are we on for next week?
16.
16. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Sri Guru Pyo Namaha. Hari Om.